everyone, and welcome to another episode of A Closer Look, the show dedicated to bringing you the facts. We ask the questions no one else will, and we get the answers that no one else can. I'm Arabina Apia. Thanks so much for joining us. The Cannabis Act 2024 has brought the Bahamas to a pivotal moment, establishing the legal framework for cultivation, distribution, and the use of cannabis for medicinal and industrial purposes. This legislation isn't just about the plant itself, it's about the opportunities that come with it. The government of the Bahamas has made it clear that this regulated industry has the potential to stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and generate much needed revenue for the country, all while maintaining a strong focus on public health and safety. Now, as the groundwork is being laid, the conversation is shifting from legislation to implementation. How will this new industry operate? What will the roles of the various government agencies, local businesses, and the community at large be? And perhaps most importantly, how will this affect the lives of average, everyday Bahamians, from entrepreneurs looking to enter the market to patients seeking alternative medicinal options? In tonight's episode, we'll dive deeper into the legislation's potential impact beyond the surface of economic projections and job creation. We'll explore what's next for regulation and how different sectors are all preparing to adapt, as well as what this means for healthcare, agriculture, and local entrepreneurship. When we return, we jump right into our conversation with Attorney General Ryan Pinder, so stay tuned because A Closer Look begins right after this break. Welcome back. You're watching A Closer Look presents Conversations on Cannabis. And helping us navigate that conversation today is Attorney General Ryan Pinder. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, AG, took to the streets to speak directly with Bahamians about their concerns surrounding the new legislation. And here's what they had to say. We have our first question coming in from Marsha Adderley.
My question is, how will this legislation benefit the average Bahamian?
It's a good question. How can average, everyday Bahamians like myself, how do we benefit from the passing of this legislation?
Sure. Well, I think it is a good question and certainly one that deserves an answer. I think that there are a number of different instances in which the average Bahamian can benefit from this suite of legislation on cannabis. Remember, the primary benefit is for medicinal purposes. And so there are scores of Bahamians with ailments that are prescribed in the law that will now get the benefit of treatment using medical cannabis. So certainly we think from a medicinal point of view and a health point of view, it's going to be a significant benefit to have different options for medicine and medicinal benefit. But there are also economic benefits that I think that Bahamians can take advantage of. Certainly in the regime, we are licensing and inviting Bahamians to apply for cultivation licenses for growing, for example, manufacturing licenses for creating it into products, and dispensing opportunities in dispensing to the general public. So within the regime, I think there's significant opportunity for Bahamians to participate. But that's not the only thing. Remember, This is medicinal cannabis, which has a certain THC level. If you recall, and you can get CBD oils and CBD treatments that are for your health benefit, and they don't have the requisite percentage of THC, but they derive from the same cannabis species of plant. There's, I think, going to be an entirely new industrial opportunity for Bahamians, whether that be growing industrial hemp, creating hemp into different products, creating CBD oils for health and wellness, being able to import or produce those and now sell them to the general public because they don't have the THC levels that would cause them to be regulated. And so that is also a new opportunity, a new marketplace within the sector on how we're amending the legislation and decriminalizing all forms of Indian hemp.
Good to know. Okay, we can move on to our next question, which comes from radio personality Don Sargent. Let's see what he has to say.
So my question is like, what safeguards would be in place to prevent the abuse of cannabis, particularly in young people?
So in general, the medicinal use of cannabis is not going to be available for minors. And there's scientific reasons for that. Because as a child, they're still developing their mental acumen, their brain is still developing. And there's science that would indicate that it may not be appropriate for minors. And so this is a medicinal benefit for adults. And also the way it's being managed is going to be very unique. This isn't a situation where you go to your doctor and you get a written script for medicinal cannabis. What we're doing is we're putting in a central portal. And so everything's going to be on a digital portal with confidential access only. So if you go to your doctor and he prescribes you some medicinal cannabis, he will put that in the portal that's managed by the Cannabis Authority, which is the regulator. When you go to fill that prescription, you would go to your pharmacy, for example, and they would be able to download your script and be able to fill it there. So that's a fraud protection mechanism, and to try to ensure that it's only being utilized for the medicinal purpose in which it is assigned. And so we balance between having it as a medicinal product, but it is a medicinal product, and so it has to be pursuant to prescriptions and the appropriate controls as well. So
from your perspective, are there any sort of extenuating circumstances that may require a doctor to prescribe to someone who is a minor? Has there been research done in that regard as well?
Yeah, I mean, that might be the case. It would depend on the ailment. So if it's a chronic issue, then the doctor may say this is really the primary benefit for the minor. But as a matter of policy and of law, in the first instance, we don't want, because of the evaluation and the development of youth, we don't want it to be an option. But the doctors certainly have the option to be able to provide the advice and the prescription that this may be for particular ailments that a minor might be.
And so that's a conversation between parent, doctor,
and then ultimately the Cannabis Authority is the regulator. Yes.
Okay. Well, another key area of interest for a lot of people has been the licenses. It's the focus of our next question from Naisha Tillis. Let's take a look.
What are the criteria for different types of cannabis licenses?
Yeah, that's a good question. And as indicated before, there are a number of different licenses. You can have a cultivation license, and within that cultivation license, you could even have different sizes. So if you want to be what they call a micro cultivator, doing small amounts, that might be one license. And then you can do larger amounts in cultivation. You have manufacturing, you have dispensing, but you also have a nursery license, for example, because it is a plant-based product, and you're going to have a plant nursery with seedlings and the like, and you're going to have some science-based analytical testing licenses. And so you have a different licenses for different activities. A transportation license, you have to be specifically licensed to be able to move the product around. And so with all of these licenses, there are different requirements. And the Cannabis Authority, which is to be established this month, was going to set out the policies and procedures for the different licenses and what you have to demonstrate in order to apply for a different type of license. You can imagine if you're only applying for a transportation license, those requirements are going to be different. You're going to have to know more about the logistics and the trucking and some security measures. Whereas if you're applying for a cultivation license, those requirements are going to be more focused around growing and the agricultural element and security and safety. So you want to make sure that the location is secure. And so, I think the specifics of what is required to apply for each license depends on the license. But needless to say, we think there are opportunities throughout.
Okay, now you mentioned that those requirements will be coming on stream. They will be set by the authority. What can persons be doing to sort of ready themselves in terms of documentation that they may need to provide? What does that look like?
Well, I think one thing that can be useful for Bahamians who are interested in the industry and in whatever compartment and component of the industry we just spoke about is to get some background information and some primer. There's a lot of opportunities online for education within the cannabis industry. Remember, we're not the first country to do this. In fact, there are many countries that have done this for decades or more before us. Canada, the United States, certain states in the United States, Israel, European countries, and even countries within our region. And so there are institutes and there are educational opportunities and exposure online. And that's something the Cannabis Authority is going to be looking at, because some of the licensing is going to require you to have some technical certification. So for example, a dispensary, you're either going to have a pharmacist who's specially trained or a dispenser who has certain specialty certificates in order to work there and in order to own the business. So any pharmacy that's licensed will be able to dispense medicinal cannabis. It's a prescription, it's a medicinal product. And so the pharmacists in the pharmacies that are established now will be able to dispense. We would want that pharmacy and the pharmacist to have some specialty training, of course, in prescribing and dispensing cannabis. And then we're going to have non-pharmacy dispensaries. But you're going to have a pharmacist attached to that dispensary to provide the oversight. And in that dispensary, you're going to have specially trained, what we call dispensers, that will be holding certain certificates and having certain experience in how to handle and dispense cannabis according to a prescription. Remember, this is prescription based, and your ailment may require a different concentration of THC within the medicinal product based upon how severe your ailment is. So if I have a chronic pain or chronic disease, my prescription amount may be much higher in percentage than if I had, let's say, anxiety and I didn't need such a high level of THC because it's treating a different type of ailment. And so those who are dispensing are going to have to be trained in that as well.
Before we go to the break, we've been talking a lot about the medical side, but it's also for religious use. So what does dispensing look like from that perspective?
Well, dispensing from that perspective would look like a purchase and sale or an acquisition from the cultivator. Because remember, in the religious use component, it's not tied to specific THC levels because it's not for the purposes of a medicinal or a health ailment, not to treat a health ailment. So they would be purchasing from the cultivator under a special license.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to take a break. Ladies and gentlemen, we have more with the Attorney General, Ryan Pinder, after this. Stay tuned. This is BDC Living, where we bring your indoor and outdoor living dreams to life. Visit our AIP warehouse showroom and explore the wide range of luxurious bedding options designed to transform your bedroom into a sanctuary of style and comfort. Experience firsthand the ultimate comfort of our sofas and sectionals, or transform your dining area with pieces that combine style and functionality. Visit any of our BDC Living locations today and let your dream decor journey begin with us. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching A Closer Look. I'm Arabina Apia, and we are in the middle of our cannabis conversations with Attorney General Ryan Pinder. Thank you again for being
Absolutely.
here. Now, before we went to the break, Attorney General, we were talking about the implications for the Rastafarian community who are looking to use cannabis through this legislation as part of their religious practice. And you mentioned, that their situation is a little different because they would be purchasing directly from the cultivator. Now, I know that has been an ongoing conversation with the Rastafarian community, but it's also indicative of the way, you guys have been handling all of the stakeholder conversations. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Under the current regime, and we've had these conversations a number of times with the Rastafarian community. In fact, they were one of the first groups we met with in private to talk about the framework, is that the actual church institution or the religious institution would be what is licensed.
Okay.
And that institution, the religious institution, would then be in charge of procuring the religious use cannabis and distributing it to their membership. And so that's the framework on how it's going to work. There has to be a membership. There have to be identified members in order for the distribution to occur. And all of that has to be licensed and reported through the Cannabis Authority. And so there is a regulatory framework to this. It's not a kind of just free for all. There is a framework in place that would have to be complied with. But we met certainly numerous times with the Rastafarian community, heard their input. In fact, they educated us very well in that, for instance, there's multiple Rastafarian churches in the Bahamas, and each one may use the sacrament in a different way. And so originally what we said is, you have to use it at your worship ceremony. And then we were educated, and they said, well, one group doesn't use it at all in their religious ceremony. They use the sacrament in private, while another group would use the sacrament in their religious ceremony. And so the treatment was different. So we amended the law to reflect that. There was a request for the Rastafarian community to have a seat on the Cannabis Authority board. And rightfully so, because they're a regulated grouping of the Cannabis Authority. And so we designated a board position for them so they can always have their input on how the regulatory framework looks like. Now, we do and listen to everything? No, we don't do that for anybody. We try to draw a balance that we think is appropriate from a policy point of view, and then overall what we're trying to accomplish. And we think we have successfully done that in this regime, and we have taken into consideration the comments and recommendations of the community, and those that we thought were appropriate, we accepted and we modified the regime for it.
Okay. Well, I guess we can move on to our next question, which comes in from Lovato Smith. Let's take a look.
My question is, how will we ensure that this will not become unmanageable for medicinal use and lead to recreational use?
Well, I know there are some people who are actually, upset that we didn't get to recreational use right away.
Sure.
So how are we, and how are we making sure that this does not?
No, absolutely. I mean, we see around the world that recreational use, well, they call it adult use now. Adult use is becoming legalized. In fact, in Florida, in this election cycle, they're voting in Florida whether it should be an adult use state or not. But we chose that we're not ready to implement a regime for adult use or recreational use cannabis. We're sticking closely to the medicinal side, the scientific side, and the religious side, and putting in the regime to regulate that. I think that's the policy position of the government, and we think the controls are in place through the authority and through the licensing regime to ensure that it is a respected regime that's not subject to abuse. I mentioned earlier the digital prescription framework that's in place to help prevent prescription fraud. So fraudulent prescriptions. With the reporting that we have from licensees and the compliance that we're going to require from the licensees, we'll be able to track that, and we will be able to see where there's red flags, where abuse may be. So for example, and we hope this doesn't happen, but if we have a particular doctor who has an obscure amount of prescriptions that is being issued, we'll be able to track that through the system and say, okay, this is out of the norm. Maybe we should go take a look at what's going on here. And the same thing with pharmacies and dispensaries. And so that real-time tracking of data will help prevent abuse. And that's important for the integrity of the system.
Well, I would be remiss to, if I didn't ask, is recreational use or adult use, as you put it, is that something that you might ever consider?
Well, I mean, to say we might never consider it, I think would be a little closed-minded, because everything evolves. Right now, we're not considering it, but certainly as we implement this and we can successfully implement this regime and get it working, we will make the scientific determination and listen to the Bahamian people on that, and watch what our surrounding communities are. But right now, recreational use or adult use is not on the table.
Okay, good to know. We can go on to our next question.
With the economic benefits that we can see from the legalization of cannabis, how will those benefits be shared across the population?
Okay, people want to know, how can I make money? How can I get it on the ground floor in this, this wonderful new industry that's coming on stream?
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about this already, and some of the recommendations I had as we put in this licensing regime. We hope in the first quarter of next year that we would have the authority set up and the policies and procedures for licensing in place, and we could start issuing our licenses in the first half of 2025. That's the goal. And so at that point in time, Bahamians will have access to the economic benefits in as long as they can qualify for a license. There's no set number of licenses that are going to be issued that have been preconceived. And so if you qualify, we encourage you to apply for whatever area you want to participate in if you meet the qualifications. I did touch on before that because we are segregating THC cannabis, medicinal cannabis, from what's otherwise known as CBD or hemp, that there is also agribusiness opportunities outside of the medicinal field, but using the Indian hemp, making CBD oils, and using Indian hemp for industrial purposes. And honestly, I think that by separating that, that's a tremendous economic opportunity for Bahamians to participate in as well, and they participating in an unregulated area because it's not a hallucinogen, it doesn't have the THC levels, and so it's not a controlled substance. And so I think that opportunity, although not being discussed a lot, I think is a significant economic opportunity for Bahamians.
In your estimation, do you see the introduction of this regularized industry? Do you see that having additional impact maybe on other areas? So we were talking about the manufacturing, we're talking about, so what does that look like? And do you think that we are in a position as a country to support that at the level that, people would need it to be to make this successful?
Absolutely. I mean, I think certainly the farming and agriculture section of the economy is poised for growth in this area, both in the medicinal side and the hemp side. On the industrial side and the manufacturing, as you mentioned. Remember, hemp is used to make clothing. Hemp is used to make paper. Hemp is used to make ropes. They're now using hemp to make rebar for construction. Wow. And so it can be used in a lot of different areas and in a lot of different industries. And I think that is a tremendous opportunity in this regime as well. And hemp has been used for hundreds of years as a farm product, as a rope, as I said, as paper, and certainly I think it's something that is going to provide a lot of opportunities for Bahamians.
Okay. In our final few moments, Attorney General, what would you like the Bahamian people to know now that this legislation is coming on stream, now that, we've sort of detailed all of the opportunities that can be available to Bahamians? What is your final message to the Bahamian people as we see this come on stream? Sure.
Well, I think, whenever there is material change in a regime, there's a sense of interest and there's a sense of nervousness, and that's natural. And I just want to reassure those who are excited about the opportunity, those who may be wary about the change, that this was a lot of work was put into this. This was benchmarked around the world. A lot of scientific work was put into it to make sure that we were doing the right thing for the country. This wasn't a haphazard decision that we decided to go with. We put in 2 years of research and 2 years of preparation on this. And so we think it's going to be, the approach is going to be, I think, very comforting. Both knowing that it's properly regulated, we're trying to control the abuse and opportunity for abuse, but we think the benefits are significant for the country. We have, the laws are published on Laws Online. That's our database for all the laws of the country. We do have a consultation website still up, cannabisbahamas.gov.bs, and it has the CARICOM report that was done called Waiting to Exhale. That was a multi-country report on regulating medicinal cannabis. And we also have the Bahamas Commission final report published, so everybody can have an opportunity to see some of the work that was done regionally, as well as here in the Bahamas. And then all of the presentations that were given and all of the legislation and the different components, there's 11 pieces of legislation to this regime, are all listed on the website.
Well, thank you very much, Attorney General, for being here and for answering all of the questions that have come in. We thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have more of a closer look right after this, so stay tuned.
Do you have the facts on the progressive approach to cannabis regulations? The government of the Bahamas introduced the Cannabis Act 2024, which is paving the way for safe and legal medical access to cannabis. The act proposes strict quality checks for safety and effectiveness, seeks to regulate cultivation, and recognizes scientific and religious uses. Why this? Why now? Get the facts, Bahamas. Together, we can build a safer, more responsible cannabis industry for everyone's future.
Welcome back. As we wrap up tonight's discussion, it's clear that the Cannabis Act 2024 is just the beginning. The real work now lies in ensuring that this legislation translates into an industry that benefits Bahamians from all walks of life, whether it's through new economic opportunities, access to medicinal cannabis, or advancements in industrial applications. But with this new frontier comes the responsibility to proceed thoughtfully and cautiously. From ensuring equitable participation in the industry to addressing concerns about misuse, we must continue to strike the balance between progress and protection. The conversation does not end here. We will continue to explore the evolving landscape of cannabis in our nation and how it's going to change the future of the Bahamas moving forward. Thank you so much for joining us here on A Closer Look, where we will continue to be committed to bringing you the facts and asking the questions that matter most. Till next time, good night, everyone.